Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how I build my melee combo system in Lyra. This is a demo presentation where I will walk through all I built from the understanding of Lyra frameworks to the setting up of the animations and implementing the combo logic. By the end, you will see how I analyze the project like Lyra, how I adapt the system, and how I build the combo animation pipeline working in Unreal Engine 5. First, a quick introduction. My name is Calvandri Mercado. I am a developer and an educational content creator from the Unreal community. I am the lead animator in Ubisoft Bordeaux. I had 12 years experience in game animation across multiple studios, and my last work was in the lead animator in the Assassin's Creed Shadows Class of YG DLC. I am two Epic Game Instructor and TA in the Unreal Fellowships for the animation and game fellowship during the last years. I specialize in animation blueprints and gameplay systems. Now, let's take a look at what you're going to learn today. Today you will understand how the Lyra system works in general, how the framework works to create the locomotion system, the gameplay ability system that they use, the gameplay effects, gameplay tags, and how you can adapt it to create your own systems based on this workflow structure. To be able to adapt all of that to my own project, like showing in this demo, to finalize and create a combo system and melee combat inside of the Lyra framework. So first, before we started, let's dive into the end result. So you're going to learn how to create this full combo system with an earlier and late cancel of the actions. How implement the full jog locomotion, the jump attack, the rush attack, and the dodge system. You will be able to see later in the video when I do a small demonstration of the final result of the demo that I created. So this is what I built during this demo. There is the Lyra system that we normally know. This is converted to 5.7, and in here I include a melee weapon that is the giant sword inspired as a gas, as I mentioned before, and this contains a combo system of 3 hits that can be changed together. You can use a jump attack to change to the same combo, and you have the options to early cancel the attacks with another attack with action like a roll or dashes, or you can late cancel it with the same actions. I will explain how they create this type of windows of controlling the combo flow. I implement of course the rolling systems and the charge attack with the jump attack. So I'm gonna dive in and explaining how I achieve all of these results on this demo, what was my thinking to be able to achieve all of this. So let's dive in. Now, before we dive in into the system, how I created, it's important to take a look at the reference I used for this project. My idea was I wanted to adapt Lyra to create a melee combo system, and I wanted to use the giant sword inspired by one of my favorite animes called Berserk. When the protagonist guts use a big giant sword called the Dragon Slayer, that is the one that we can see in the video. And he actually inspired me a lot to create the pose of the character that I use that we can see on the red character in here, the one with the berserker armor in the red background. And I get some inspirations too on the clouds and other games like for example Monster Hunter, Elden Ring, and of course the berserker as I mentioned. So this was my inspirations when I decided to create all of these systems of what is the type of combo that I wanted to create. Now, with all of that, I dive into Lyra and try to understand the core principles of this project and knowing why I wanted to do this. The main reason I wanted to use Lyra was because it's almost ready to be used, and it's built with the 3-point best practices. And it's a modular gameplay system using the gameplay ability system. And this will show, for example, when I was looking for a job, so this will show potential understanding of the animation principles and game development inside Unreal Engine. So this was the perfect opportunity for me to create a demo reel that showed this to recruiters and to different companies. This was the main reason I decided to create that. And of course, it has a multiplayer shooter framework, so I can develop it or later if I decide to create something like a multiplayer with the system that I was creating. And and basically this is Lyra. And with Lyra, it gives you a really professional point to start the systems and already a pretty good framework with a real production code and learn it from the Unreal Engine developers. And he has a really modular design that allow you to really extend it if you understand like an important aspect that you want to modify when you are creating the demo reels and is active in development and continues updated by Epic Games. Recently, they switched it to the game animation example project, but that one is more like an animation project than a real full game. Lyra is kind of the biggest, that's one that they created for Unreal Engine 5. So what I will cover during this demo. So in this demo, we're gonna check first the animation systems. We're gonna check the animation blueprint and link ledger setup using Lyra. How you can take a look at that, how you understand the configuration, the setups, how to set up the montage for the roles animations that are connected with the locomotion system, and how you can connect the linked legend into the Lyra system using the weapons blueprints and data assets. Then we're going to understand the combo architecture that I created, the million autonomy overview for each individual attack, and how I use that million autonomy to create the combo flow and understand a little this combo architecture. Then I will explain how to use the data structure of the weapons to be able to use the weapon as a proper equipment in Lyra. And I will explain some of the custom notifies I needed to create to be able to achieve all of these systems. And finally, we will see how all of this is connected and queued to the gameplay ability system or GAS, how I use the ability setups and the effects, how I create my custom combo system approach, and finally explain a little how the gameplay tags and Lyra and works to create all of this. So let's dive into the animation system architecture inside of Lyra system. So first we have the ABB and mannequin base. This one we will not touch it because this one contains the core locomotion logic. What we need to do is create a custom linked ledger animation for the giant sword. I call it in this case ABB giant sword animation layer. This will be connected to towards the linked ledger system to the base animation blueprint. And this link layer will contain all of the animations that I create for the Giant's World Locomotion set. So let's dive inside Unreal to understand how this works. In Unreal, inside of the folder Content, Characters, Hero, Mannequin, and Animations, we have the APP Mannequin base. This one is the one that we don't want to touch. The ones that we're gonna touch actually are the ones that are children of the APP item layer base. We can right click and create a child animation blueprint here from this one. Or what I did is go into my animations to the linked layers, into the locomotion, and I find the unarmed and I duplicate this one. That was the perfect one that fits for me for the needs of the giant sword. And then I create a folder when I put all of the locomotion animations and the duplicated linked layer and put the proper name. And in this one I feed it with all of the necessary animations. For this case, I focus only in the joke animations, the idle, and the turning in place for the standing animation and jumps. So let's take a look of how I set up these animations. I will explain some particular information for each of them. From the idle, the most important thing is a cycle. It needs to be in place, it's not additive, and it needs to have the basic essential pose of the character with this weapon that sells the idea of the heaviness of the weapon and the attitude of the character and everything. This is like the most important core animation for the entire locomotion set. For the other animations that I needed to create, we had the jog animations that are divided in four. So we had the jog cycles that are these ones. They are having the root lock and enable root motion, and they need to have the sync markers and the full plan notifies. And one important thing about the cycles is that the cycles, if we go to the skeleton and we select the root, we will see that the forward is going towards the direction of the y positive. Curiously, the right one that we had in here is actually a duplicate of the forward, rotated 90 degrees, but keeping the root pointing forward to the green here. We see here we can convert all these rotations and translation to local space, and we can confirm that the root never changed rotation. And now he's moving to the opposite direction on the X for the right. And we see that it's basically the forward animation with the upper body rotated 90 to the other opposite direction, so it looks like it's looking forward when it's doing the movement. This is done in this way is because the Lyra system for the locomotions he used node called orientation warping for creating the blend space. Lyra doesn't use blend space for the additional blend space. They use a sequencer player. In that way, the sequencer player will change dynamically depending on the direction, and it will be use the orientation warping to create the diagonal movements. So that is the main reason, because the animations need to be set up in this way when created. And for the backward, we see that it's the same thing on the front, but it's going to the opposite direction of the y axis or green one. And from the left is the same principle. We rotate it 90 degrees, and it's going towards the direction of the X, and it's basically a copy of the right, or sorry, of the back, with the with this orientation and with the upper body looking forward. And all of them needs to have the sync markers. For the starts, they need to have sync markers, and they need to use a distant curve. This distant curve is created with this modifier here in the animation modifiers, where we set that the axis to be only the horizontal axis, the X and the Y. And this distant curve, the important thing for the stars is that he starts in zero and then goes into the distance. And we notice that at the beginning has a slow into a linear motion. From the stop is the same principle using the same distance modifier, but we don't use sync markers, we don't use for the stops. And the curve is going from the negative velocity into zero, and is applied to the same from the same thing from the forwards. From the stop and the forwards, it will be negative velocity to zero. From the starts, it will be zero to positive velocities. This is the way that the distant machines work to detect which specific frames you need to use only just for this specific animation. For the jog pivots, the most important is that the pivot name is indicating which is the direction that it will take at the beginning and go inverted. So if, for example, it's a backward, it means that he's going into the backward direction at the beginning, and then he will swap towards the front direction. And for this one, they need to have the sync markers. You use the distant curve modifier as the other ones, and you need to add this transition locomotion that is allowed to basically transition from here into here to the cycles. And the curve modifier is essentially the blending between the forward and the backward, left and right, or right and left, etc. Now for the other type of locomotion that we need to take a look, we had the jumps. So we had, for the jumps, we had the multiple type of animations. We have first the start. All of them needs to have root motion enable and root or force root lock. We will see that the start will use the distant curve modifier again, but in this case we only use the z-axis, and it will start in zero, and it needs to be a linear moving going up. For the start loop, in this case, it needs to be in place and it will have the root motion enabled and the root lock enabled, but it will stay in place in the last position of the jump card. As we can see here, we can go here and swap it. It will go stay in the same place. For the apex, will be the connection between the jump loop and the fall loop, and it's basically the point when the jump reach the higher position on the jump. And we're still using the same curve. It's important that for all of the jumps we add the disable AKK with value of 1 so it doesn't affect the with the ground IK. You can see the curve how it's working in here. And for the fall loop is the same principle, is the last part of the jump, the last frame of the jump apex is where the fall loop start to move. So we have the cycle in there with disable AKK in 1. And for the landing is we are using this one called jump recovery that will have a root motion enabled, and it will need to have the disable AKK, but at the beginning will be enabled and the end will be disabled, so the player can control again, use the AKs on the legs. And the ground distance will be going from negative to 0, the distance for the landings. And this needs to be additive based on the local frame in local space, a local frame of this animation that will be the last frame that is essentially the idle pose. For the turnings, we're gonna have two animations, a turning right and turning left that we can see here. For them, we're gonna use the turn yaw animation modifier. This comes automatically set up for you, and it will extract these two values. Important that for this one, the animation should be starting in a negative or positive 90 and need to finish on 0 to be for the system to work correctly and for the turn yaw weight to work properly. And normally it needs to have a really fast acceleration or really fast deceleration. Now let's talk about the roles animations. For the hero role gameplay ability, I duplicate the hero dash and I call it gameplay ability hero role. The main reason is because I want to modify in the future the logic to hide immunity frames without modifying the original blueprint and be able to have a more controlling the values of this ability system. Because in this case, the idea of the hero role is that it's a more like a short distance role that is more like avoiding attacks and being able to counter attack. While the hero dash is more like a movement stuff or get closer distance. So that is the main reason because I wanted to separate both of them into different abilities and not have a hierarchical connection between them. The gameplay plays instead of the hero dash, and I use the same logic for the moment. The idea is that with the gameplay ability system, I will be able to replace the hero dash by the hero roll. I will show how I did that later. So now let's take a look at the role animations first before we dive into real. We had 4 animations and we will have one montage per each animation. And the animation will start in the idle and they will do the roll action and then finish in the idle, all in the same animation to have good blendings. And they will play it in the montage in the default slot and they will not need to use root motion because this is fake towards the gameplay ability system with some notes I will explain later. So let's dive in and take a look inside Unreal Engine 5. So in Unreal Engine 5, I find this hero dash animation that we can find in here and this directory that is not in the normal content folder of the project, but it's instead in the plugins on the shooter core in game, and we have in here the different abilities, in this case the dash. So what I did, I used the same logic in the dash with the same setups. I found it, I duplicated them, and then I move it into the weapon folder. That is this one that I created here in the shooter core weapons. I create the giant sword, and inside of here, I put on my blueprints. In the case, I added the hero rolling here that we can see here. And in this one, I added the animations for my hero role and the distance and root motion duration and everything that I set up in here. Basically, what I was exploring here is how it works, so I tweaked some values, see how it reacts in gameplay, test it again until I get something that I feel comfortable for me. This was a lot of iterations. Later, what I did in here was I added some gameplay tags, like for example, when I do in the role, I cannot do a jumps, or I cannot do an action. I cannot. I connected that is doing a same action dash, so it replaced the action dash, and it has the same even movements of the dash, so it's basically don't. It cannot be connected with the dash or playing a dash. And actually, this will be blocked if you had an unskippable gameplay tag. I will explain how I added that and what is the purpose of this. That is connected with the combo system that I will explain later. So another stuff that I did in here is I tweaked the values in here to be more precise for what I wanted. For example, the strength is way lower and the time of the motion duration is way longer than the hero dash. So we can take a look. For example, this is the hero dash animation that I use as a reference to see how the animation was set up. We see that it does not have a root motion animation. In theory, it has, but because we had the root motion lock, the character is not moving forward. So we see here. And that's the main reason, because the character will not move backward, forward, etc. Same thing I did with the hero role. So I will find the animation for the roles in here. So I can use right in here in the search bar for role. And we're gonna have here the different roles animation we can check in here. So we had the animation that is the player from the idol doing the role and then returning to the idol. From the other ones, I did the same thing, returning to the idol. The thing that I did to simplify this and make it a little easier is that I started the idol in the direction that I wanted to do the role. So I started from this one. And then to be able to don't see that swap in the direction, I added blending in at the beginning to hide that, and because the animation is so fast, it will not be noticeable with the zero point 0.1 blending. And I added in here in the montage, I added the disable KK, and this is playing the full body, or it can be played too in the default slot. We can use both of these to be able to play these animations. Before we continue, it's important to note that the main system of this roll and dash gameplay abilities is based on this apply root motion constant force. This allows us to apply it basically at the root motion transformation to a specific direction with a specific strength and one specific duration, so we can tweak it. And the good thing in this one is easier to replicate more than another ways of using the root motion. And the good thing of this is that the root motion constant force allow us to control a little the movement of the character while you are doing the actions. For example, if I go here and do the root motion, you will see that I can still rotate and do some actions in middle of the root motion animation that was not be possible if I enable the root motion. But I still have the benefits of doing the root motion, you see. For example, it is modified based on the speed of the character. So if I stop moving, you will see that the root motion will stop. Same thing happen if I do the dash. If I do the dash and I stop, it will reduce way more, but if I still moving, the distance will be greater. So take that in consideration when you're working on the system, that this allows you to control the distance and let the player like to control how much distance they wanted to move. With the dash, this is the difference. The dash is way faster, so it does, and it moves way more distance. So it's a little more difficult to use in a combat with melee weapons. For the next animations in the locomotion system, we have the quick animation. We need two animators for this. One additive or one non-additive. They need to be in place and don't need to have root motion. And the idea is to have the idle arm into the quick action into the idle with the giant sword. And the non-additive will play it in the upper body slot, and the additive will play in the upper body additive slot. So let's take a look on site Unreal Engine how this is set up. So now here in Unreal, we're gonna go to content characters, hero, mannequin, animation, and actions, and here we're gonna find our two, we're gonna adhere the two quick animations. So for the quick animation to work, the idea that I recommend you is that use the weapon art to attach the weapon, of course. And this weapon will be attached onto the back of the character or whatever the slot is the position on where the weapon is normally holstered during the first part of the animation until the character grabs the weapon and then he draws the weapon and it continues in the hands. So that is the recommendation. In representation, I say that it's started with the unarmed idol, but my recommendation is to start directly on the legs pose of your new idol. In this case, the Giant's Word. In case that each idol has a different legs pose, but if it is any all of the idols has the same leg pose, you can use the unarmed idol as the starting pose of the equip animation. Some games decide to start the quick animation a little more quicker, so they started around the frame 4 or 5. But and for Lyra, it works pretty well with starting with this pose around. And as I mentioned, it doesn't need to have the neighborhood motion or force root lock. For the edited version of the equip animation, you need to use the local space selected animation frame from the idle ready, and you will need to use the 0 frame for this same animation. So now that we check how the equip animation is set up, let's type in how we can link the linker layer to the Lyra weapon system. To do that, we need to go to the setup path, the plugin shooter core and weapons. And inside, we're gonna create a giant sword folder for the weapon blueprint asset. And inside, we're gonna create a duplicate the weapon instant base. And this weapon instant base, we will duplicate. We're gonna call it the weapon instant base melee. This will be helpful in the case in the future you want to introduce more weapons, so you can reuse this weapon instant base melee. Or this one can be inherited from the weapon instant base normally, but it's up to you depending on how many changes you want to do to the logic between the base and the melee one. And based on the weapon instance melee, we wanna create a child and we're gonna call it for the giant sword, and we're gonna link it in there. So let's dive into Unreal to see how it's. So here in Unreal, we're gonna go to the shooters in the plugins folder, and we're gonna go to the weapons. So this is the weapon instant base that we're gonna duplicate. That is the one that contains base logic, so the weapons like equip, the layers, and everything that we need. So the important thing is there's a duplicate of this or child of this one, and in this case the weapon is stand-based melee. So I create a new layer for the giant sword, and inside of here I create a child for the weapon-based instant giant sword. And inside of this one I put the equip animation, I keep the generic one, and I add the melee attack. In this case will be the giant sword charge attack. So it's pretty easy to set up or charge attack animation later with the setup. And for the equip anim set, I just added the AVP giant sword anim layer, and inside I specify which is the animation set that I need to go if I equip the weapon, if I don't have any other weapon. So in this case will be the anim layer or the anim layer female for the arms. And the rest are some settings that are not relevant for the melee weapons that we basically use as the default of the weapon base. Now let's dive into the attack animation anatomy. The attack animation are divided in three phases. The first one is called the anticipation, or we call it anticipation. Here the anticipation starts in the idle, and it goes to the pre-strike frame, or the frame before we started to launch the attack forward to hit the enemies or launch the attack to the direction of the enemies of the target. This stage or phase can be cancelled or can be fainted. The second stage is called the active or the hit phase, when we do the slash or the attack movement. This cannot be cancelled. The player is full commitment in this moment of the action, and the hit trace is on during this part of the attack animation. Then comes the recording. In the recording, we hold for a few frames the last frame of the active or hit section, and then it will be transitioned to the idle pose again. And in here we have the transition windows closing. So this is the moment when we can transition into the new attack. And at the end it will return to the idle as I mentioned. For the combo chain flow, for mid-chain attacks, the anticipation starts at the first frames of the previous recovery. And it creates a seamless attack transitions. So for a smooth and fluid combo. So let's dive into this with a little more details inside to Unreal Engine 5. Here in Unreal Engine 5, we have a sequencer that I create to preview the animations of the character. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move a little up my character, and I had the three combo animations. I will disable the first two to take a look on the first one. We can see that, as I mentioned before, this attack start in the idle, goes into the anticipation pose, and in the moment that it reaches this point is the moment when we activate the active part of the animation. And this first part, when we have the anticipation, the character doesn't move forward. And in the moment of the attack, we will see that the character start to move forward towards the enemy or towards the target, and we do the active frame. On this moment, when we hit the attack in here, we transition into the recovery section. And in this moment is when we will be able to cancel the animation again or transition to the next combo. So we can see if, for example, I cut this animation around this part when we hit and we enable the second combo, we will see that if I move the second combo towards here, we will see that in the second combo the weapon will be matching, we will be matching the same pose over here, and we will be able to transition into the next attack seamless. And same thing will be happening, for example, extend a little more the sequencer, and I cut here this animation, and I enable the third one, and I move it into here. We will see that the next combo transition to this from this animation, so we can have a seamless transition when we play the three animations together. In here, what is happening is I cut in the in current moment, so I just need to move these two animations. I just need to move this animation for a few frames forward. So here we had a smooth transition now. Now that we understand how the attacks works, let's take a look to the combo flow. The combo flow is how the attacks are connecting one to each other. So first we had the first attack or the jump attack. Both of them act as a first part of the combo. We enter into the anticipation phase. In this anticipation phase can be cancelled by movement actions or can be skippable. We open here the skippable windows. Then when we reach the last frame of the anticipation, we enter to the combo window open and we enter into the attack phase when we can hit the enemies. If during this combo window we press attack button, we go into the next combo, the change. But if the press doesn't happen, we cancel the combo and we return to the idle. And this will be repeated from the next here. If we press the attack, we're gonna reinitiate the anticipation phase from the next combo attack from the position that we're speaking from the previous combo animation. So let's take a look at what combo animations we need. We had in total 4 combo animations. We had 2 variations for the first attack, that is the ground attack and the jump attack. And for each of these animations, we will have one montage. And all of them are composed of anticipation, active or attack, and recovery. They are playing on the full body or the default slot. They can have motion warping, and they need to have the root motion on. So let's take a look at the montage and the animations, how they are set up in Unreal Engine 5. So in Unreal, we can see that we have the combo animation. We don't have any cubes extracted, and we had the enable root motion enabled, but we had the force root lock disabled. And in this animation, we only had the foot plans notified on the animation. For the combo section, we had the full body default to play the animation. And in the first part, we will see that this animation is playing the notifies that enable the skippable windows. In here, when we open the combo window, we had inside the melee trace to do the damage. And when we go outside of the melee combo, and these militaries need to finish before the combo window finish, and then after the combo window finish, sooner we start the skippable window to be able to skip the attack if it's necessary. Same thing happened with the second and third attack, and for the jump attack is the same. So let's dive in inside of the gameplay to see how the chain works. So we have the weapon in here, so we throw attack and we are able to dash after the combo section finish, on the hit section finish. Same thing with the roll. We only can roll after the hit happens. Same thing with the jump, we can cancel. Or we can cancel the action before the hit section started. In the next part of the presentation, we will take a look of how we set up the combo flow inside of the Unreal Engine, creating the gameplay ability for the melee weapon. For doing that, I created first gameplay ability melee weapon damage base. This is allow me to generate a trace function for all of the gameplay abilities I inherit from this gameplay ability. And from this one, I create a gameplay ability for the melee combo, and later I will use one for creating one for the rush attack and for the jump attack if it's necessary. And I create a child for this one called gameplay ability melee combo giant sword. This serves as a foundation for the implementation for combo sequence logic, attack tracking, event-driven animation control, and hit detection systems. On top of this, I create something else in the blueprints using some technology that we had in the 5.7 and 5.5 and forward, that is a chooser table. Instead of using a logic that in a function to detect which combo to play depending on the values, I use a chooser table for that. And to use a chooser table outside of the animation blueprint, I needed to create a structure. The structure contains all of the input data that the chooser table will receive. Now in this case, it's a boolean that tells me I am in there or not, and an integer that told me exactly the combo index that I'm using. So let's dive inside of Unreal to understand a little how this combo logic works in general. Now in here in Unreal, so I will go to my content and I will go to the shooter core content again. And in here in game, I will have some of the melee. I will have a melee combo, a melee damage bases. So in the melee damage base, I create the logic for the traces based on the plugin that I hit me. This plugin allows me to create traces for melees and able to generate these traces in between frames. That is really useful when you had a really low frame rate. So it helped me to get a more precise. And to be able to do that, I needed to create some sockets on my animation. So let's take a look on that quickly, how I set up the socket. So if I go to the actions and attack, and I open one of my attacks, you will see that in the skeleton side of my weapon art, I added two sockets. One that represents the start of the trace and one that represents the end of the trace. So this is the one used later in the melee trace notified that is using for generate the traces. Here we can see in the details, if I press the melee trace, we see that in the melee trace info I put the start socket and the end socket and I specify some of the values. These traces are used later in here to generate that trace context to be able to detect sign hitting any character, and then by gameplay ability setup I am able to send the damage based on the setups done in the default melee settings. So basically the last part is a duplicate part of the melee or the playability melee, but it's extended by with the custom logic of the traces to have more precise traces. And this is for the damage base. For the melee combo, I did the whole combo setup. So how it works. Essentially, at the beginning of the ability, I get reset my combo index to 0 because this is like starting the combo from scratch. Then I get a sequence in here. In the first part of the sequence, it's mostly for cosmetics, camera animations, and stuff. And in here I add this custom event called next attacking sequence. This will be allowing me to jump into the next attack in the same gameplay ability. Here I will play the montage, and this function inside the gameplay ability allow me to trigger some functions depending on depending on the part of the montage. So if I cancel the montage or complete the montage or blend out the montage, I will reset the combo and I will end the ability only if the player didn't request any attack. Now, on here in the sequence at the beginning, I will call the function that I create or the custom event that I create for the weapon trace on the parent class. And then I will start all of the my gameplay events, the ones that detect when I hit the enemy, the one that open the skippable and close the skippable windows for being cancelled during the actions, and the ones that open the combo. When the combo is open, I am able to know if I am able to continue attacking to the next one by detecting this boolean if the player requests a key or not. And then when the combo is closed, I basically check again did I request a combo. If I request a combo, it will increment the combo and then go to the next attack. To be able to know how many combo index I have, normally has a montage array with the same amount of combo index in here, or you can have a specific number. That is the only downside I can say it about the chooser table. For now, there is no easy way to get the value of how many entries we have in the chooser table to detect the amount of combos. And to set up the chooser table is done in this get montage to play. So what I did is I get the Lyra actor from here. I get the component and the falling to detect if it's falling here. Here is the old version, how I supposed to be doing all of this with the old version, getting the montage, playing the combo index on the melee attacks, and selecting the jump attack if it's falling. But in this case, I just passing the same values into this evaluate chooser that is analyzing my chooser table, and the chooser table is in here. So it's super easy to do because now I can add more rows if I decide to have a more longer combo, or I can add another one in my structure to say, for example, if I have a variation of combo 1 or variation combo 2, so I can play different combo variations in here. So this is a really easy way to have clean this combo system. Now with my combo system full setup, in here I can just go into my folder for the giant sword, and I will have gameplay abilities. I will have a giant sword combo that is just a child of that blueprint, and in here I will have my melee attacks and all of the other setups that I had in here for the combo to work. In here, for example, with the camera checks, I just had an array of camera checks to play with these ones. But you know that this system can be extended even more. For example, the user table can contain a structure with the combo attack, with the camera checks and other stuff that needs to be playing in the combo system. So you can see how this system for the melee combo can be extended even more further with this simple setup. So now, the next part is the charge attack. For the charge attack, I create a child of my gameplay ability melee weapon damage base, and I call it charge attack giant sword. This one is a really simple gameplay ability that is playing a montage, calling my weapon trace event, and then I'm waiting for the hit event to be sent to the target that it was hit. For this charge attack, I just need a one animation and one montage. The animation needs to be composed of the anticipation. The charge, the part when is moving forward, like in a dash ability. Then the active zone or attack zone, that's when it's doing the attack and we activate the traces. And the recovery, that's when it returns to the idle. And this one has the same properties of the other combo attacks animations. In using the default slot or full body slot, using a motion warping, really useful. If, for example, the charge you want to add some tracking to it, you can use the motion warping for that. And of course, it needs to have the real motion on. I don't want to dive into this animation inside the Unreal Engine because it basically uses the same setup of the attack animation, so you can decompose them and understand how you can build this charge animation by yourself. Now I want to talk about the notifies. I create two specific notifies for this system to work. One is the animation notify skippable window. These notifies will send two events, event montage timing skippable and event montage timing unskippable. That is the windows to open and close when the character can skip or not the combo. And the other one is called anim notify combo window that is used to open and close the montage combo window to be able to input the next combo attack or close the combo sequence. And finally, I use an extra notify from the plugin Did I Hit for the melee traces, in charge of the calculation of the hits traces of the animations. So let's dive in a little about these two notifies as Unreal Engine 5. So inside the Unreal Engine, inside of the folder All Content Character Heroes and Abilities, I create the animation notify for the combo window and the skippable window. They are basically the same notified. The only thing that they are doing is sending an event tag to the owner. So this by default, I set up the proper notify that I want to send to them. And same thing happened with the skippable window. We can see that the event tag is sent to the skippable already. So with this small setup, I can go to the to my animations, the actions, and add it into the montage, into the specific section. For example, we have the skippable window added at the beginning, as I explained before. I just needed to click here, and in properties, I can set up the skippable window tag to send, and then in here, the skippable window skippable to send. And then same thing for the combo window. I set the combo window opening here and then the combo window closing here. I could be done this on the same notified. I didn't want to do it. It's just for sake of understanding when I want to read what is doing each notified. That is the reason because I create two different ones. And this is the extra trace notified from the plugin that I use for the tracings when we can see it in their trace in there during the animation. And this is basically because I enabled the book in here for second being sure that I am doing the traces at the proper moment in the animation. So here you can take a look at the final folder structure with all of the key files and the key folders. I will go directly into Unreal to show you how everything is set up and some important aspects of each of these individual files and folders. So here inside the Unreal Engine, we can see the folder structure as I mentioned. Here we can find the abilities that we created. the materials of the giant sword, the meshes of the giant sword. I need one skeletal mesh for the one that is spawning for the character, and one static mesh that is used for the pickable object. The pickable object will be this one. So in here, we will assign on side of this pickable. That is a duplicate of one of the ones that I already in the scene. I put the weapon definition in here. That is the pickable data of the giant sword. So I can find it in here on the folder. In here, the things that we're gonna need to assign will be the static mesh, the orientation, the scales, and everything for the static mesh, and some interactable sounds. And in here, we need to assign the ID. For the ID, the information like the inventory fragments and stuff that is used to symbolize for doing the combats and features. You don't need to touch most of this stuff. You can use the basic stuff for another weapons. The important is to change in here is use the skeletal mesh, the display's name, and the display name in the top, and the weapon ID here that you can find it in here. If we open it, in this one, we will contain the instance of the weapon that we want to spawn, the ability set that we will set up, the actor to spawn, that is the weapon that we are spawning, the socket that we need to attach, and if we need to correct the rotation of the weapon when it's handling in the hands by the character. So let's check all these ones. So the weapon instance, it just has, as I mentioned before, the equip and unequip and the charge attack, the linked layer, and the layers needed to be used when it is unequipped. All of this part can be skipped because this is mostly for ranged weapons, but for this weapon we will not use it. The other one that we need to set up is the ability sets. For this one, we open it, and in here we assign the ability sets. It's really important that the input tags in here that we put are matching the input that we wanted to use to trigger this ability. In this case, the combo is triggered by the fire weapon. The charge attack is triggered by the melee or the what the melee normal melee weapon action. And for the rolls, I using the reload weapon or the weapon, but you can use the dash. But it's a little more complicated to set up. For the sake of the tutorial and the demonstration, is perfectly like this. And finally, we can check this weapon in here. This is essentially the one that is spawned by on the character. And the most important in here is to assign the skeletal mesh, the giant sword that is in here, and all of the traces. So you can use these two traces in here to symbolize where they are positioned and it's correctly or not. Something that is important to mention is that, for example, for the combo system that I created here, if I go to the melee combo, that is this one, I mentioned that I'm using this gameplay queue, melee hits, and everything in here. This, for example, this is a even montage timings that I create by myself. So how you can create it? Just by clicking in here, you can go in here, go into events, and in here you can add a sub tag. So for example, I add one called timing skippable and timing unskippable. It's important that when you are adding this one, you use the source to be the shooter core tags. So you connected all of that with the gameplay ability system. And for the other one, that is the combo open, I did the same thing. I added in here, but instead of timing, I added in the montage combo. So for example, in here, it's important that you add the gameplay timing unskippable by default for the combo. So by default it's unskippable, and we disable the unskippable when the tag is enabled in here. For example, skippable here, we will remove the unskippable from the defaults, and then we add it later when we reach the other gameplay event. And what is going to be done is in other attacks that or other actions that we want to disable, they will be disabled by this specific ability. So we go here into dash, for example, hero dash. If I open in here, we will set this will be blocked by unskippable tags added to the character when he's doing a specific moments. The same thing happened for the dodges and the rush attack and another animation that will be cancelled by the stack in here. So that is the way that you can do the unskippable frames on the animation. And with this, we finish the presentation of this demo that I created for Lyra, Milli Combo System. So let's jump into the conclusions. So what you learned today with this one, you learn understand how the combo anatomy works, how the event trade architecture, the input windows, and the attack sequence work, how I planned all of that, how you can analyze project like Lyra to be able to reading the framework, finding the system, and understanding the capability systems setups inside of these projects to be able to adapt these systems and extend it, for example, for a melee system with custom abilities and production-ready setups. And at the end, you learn too how to create a melee attack anatomy and combo flow, understanding and notify the hit detection and distance matching used for the melee systems on your own projects or other systems on your own projects. Now you can build this in your own projects. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye.